President Obama put out a statement about net neutrality. Now, understand the context of this. The president says he's in favor of net neutrality. He campaigned on that several times. But then he put in charge of the FCC, who would make the decision on whether the internet would be protected, the former top lobbyist for the people who are the cable and internet providers. So he decided that perhaps net neutrality is not the right way to go. They're in the middle of that decision now, but he's indicated that he's going to go in that direction. Now, President Obama is going to come out and say, look, here's where I stand on net neutrality. So this is very important. He says, net neutrality has been built into the fabric of the internet since its creation, but it is also a principle that we cannot take for granted. Now, normally you'd see that and you'd say, okay, but here comes the but, right? That's classic President Obama. Now, I said it and it's really true and it's really important, but, right? But in this case, are you sitting down? There was no but. What is this? He actually said the right things here. Now, whether they'll put that in effect, of course, is a different question, but let me give you the good news here. He said, we cannot allow internet service providers to restrict the best access or to pick winners and losers in the online marketplace for services and ideas. That is why today I am asking the Federal Communications Commission, the FCC, to answer the call of almost 4 million public comments and implement the strongest possible rules to protect net neutrality. Booyah! Now, again, if you don't know much about net neutrality, it's very important because what the internet providers want to be able to do is to say, look, I put the pipes in, I get to control the pipes. So there'll be a fast lane and a slow lane. The fast lane will be what you have today. It won't be any faster, okay? But the real problem is the slow lane. That's where I'm going to put people who don't pay my ransom, right? And who might be my competitors. And people I disagree with politically. They all get slowed down. All of a sudden, you can't access their websites, their streaming services, whatever it happens to be. It gives them tremendous power over the internet. And President Obama is saying, no, you're not allowed to do that, okay? You'll have to treat every website equally. That's exactly how it has been and should continue to be to protect the internet. He goes on to say, I believe the FCC should create a new set of rules protecting net neutrality and ensuring that neither the cable company nor the phone company will be able to act as a gatekeeper, restricting what you can do or see online. That's great news. And now he's more specific. He says, no blocking. If a consumer requests access to a website or service and the content is legal, your ISP should not be permitted to block it. That way, every player, not just those commercially affiliated with an ISP, gets a fair shot at your business. That's a true free marketplace. Now, conservatives and libertarians should love that. Of course, since they hate Obama and in fact are corporatists and are not at all capitalists, they hate it. They're like, oh, please give Comcast and Verizon extra advantages and monopoly power. That's what Republicans want. President Obama's against it. He says also, no throttling is allowed. Nor should ISPs be able to intentionally slow down some content or speed up others through a process often called throttling based on the type of service or your ISP's preferences. Then he says we need to have increased transparency. The connection between consumers and ISPs, the so-called last mile, is not the only place some sites might get special treatment. So I'm asking the FCC to make full use of the transparency authorities the court recently upheld, and if necessary, to apply net neutrality rules to points of interconnection between the ISP and the rest of the internet. So you can see how detailed these rules are, and every part of these rules makes a ton of sense and is very valuable. One last rule, no paid prioritization. Simply put, no service should be stuck in a slow lane because it does not pay a fee. That kind of gatekeeping would undermine the level playing field essential to the internet's growth. So every one of these rules is protecting the internet as we have it now, okay? There's no interference. All the websites get treated the same. That's great, right? It's why a lot of us love the internet. It has not been taken over by the corporate media that gets to be the gatekeepers. Now, of course, the corporate media hates that and they want to take it over. So they've been pressing the Obama administration. That's how they partly got to be, their top lobbyist is the head of the FCC. Now, President Obama, if he really cared about these things, maybe shouldn't have picked that guy. So that's an obvious mistake. We'll have to see based on his actions whether this is a cover for that mistake or he's actually trying to fix that mistake. Okay. So he goes on to explain one other thing that's very important. He says, so as I have before, I'm asking for an explicit ban on paid prioritization and any other restriction that has a similar effect. For almost a century, our law has recognized that companies who connect you to the world have special obligations not to exploit the monopoly they enjoy over access in and out of your home or business. I believe the FCC should reclassify consumer broadband service under Title II of the Telecommunications Act. Now, that's also very important because it makes those providers, the ISPs, a public utility. So, for example, a phone company is a public utility. So they can't say, hey, if you're with us at AT&T and somebody that has Verizon as a service calls you, we won't allow that call to go through. No. This is a very important public service that you're doing, and you have to be fair and equal in treatment of everyone else using that service. So he's saying the same rules should apply to the internet providers. That is important because then it doesn't leave any wiggle room. That's the way you can regulate it and absolutely get net neutrality. And the Supreme Court has already said that you can get net neutrality that way. All right. Now, of course, nonetheless, some progressives will be skeptical, and you have to see if he's a man of his word. Now, if his FCC chairman then turns around and goes, yeah, that's like your opinion, man, and ignores it and kills net neutrality, then all this talk will have been for nothing. And in fact, it'll have been even worse. It will be to cover his ass. And in fact, at one point he does say, the FCC is an independent agency and ultimately this decision is theirs alone, which is a little disconcerting. Now, it's true, but of course, he can hire and fire the head of the FCC. So he appears to be giving a clear directive here. If the head of the FCC listens to him, they make it a public utility and protect net neutrality, then terrific. The work of the activists and others, which I'll get to in a second, made a huge difference. And President Obama did the right thing. If it turns out the head of the FCC kills net neutrality anyway, and Obama goes, oh, golly gee willikers, what could I do? Well, then you know that this was all a farce, and it was just meant to protect himself and his so-called legacy, and that he was just playing with us. But for now, don't be overly cynical. This is very good news, and to have the president on your side is no small thing, okay? And this was not at all unclear. What he said was crystal clear, and it's an obvious message to the FCC to do the right thing. Now, finally, understand that this message, clear message from the president, didn't come until one other factor came into play. We already had the 4 million people that had sent in letters to the FCC demanding net neutrality. What changed recently was some of the huge internet companies like Google, using their mighty power, Facebook, came in and said, after being on the sidelines for a long time, Google came in and said, yeah, we're in favor of net neutrality. We oppose what the ISPs are doing. So once they came in with their ton of corporate cash that also flows into politics, then all of a sudden, President Obama remembered his principles and policy position on this. But I'll take the win any way I can get it. And in fact, you should thank those giant internet companies for fighting back against the internet provider companies, which are totally different, and at least balancing the playing field here. And you know how American politics is. If you don't have some huge corporation on your side also bribing the politicians, you stand almost no chance. So thank God, in this case, the internet corporate cavalry came into our defense, which then leads partly to President Obama coming to our defense. And let's hope that it all works to get the job done at the end, which is to protect net neutrality. That decision has not been made yet, so stay tuned.